my name's Kester Paine and I work in the fixed access engineering team in Vodafone, responsible for the design and implementation of the UK fixed broadband platform. I'll be spending a few minutes talking to you about our deployment of IPv6 on the fixed line consumer broadband platform that's fixed, not mobile. It's worth saying that in a project such as this, it takes many people to make it happen, several of whom are here with me today, so that's great. And if there's any complicated questions, that are going to them. In terms of questions, please do jot them down and we'll take them at the end. First, a little bit of background. Vodafone has had a presence in the UK broadband market for many years, stemming from its acquisition of Cable & Wireless in 2013. But this was mainly focused on wholesale, i.e. white label, and enterprise offerings, for example, broadband access to IPVPN. In 2015, we launched the consumer broadband product, and since then we've added various new access types such as fibre to the home and fibre to the premise. We now have around 1.4 million consumer broadband subscribers. Our planning for implementation of dual stack has been in the works for a number of years, with launch around a year ago. It's fair to say that we'd wanted to launch earlier, but the surge in traffic caused by COVID required us to focus on that instead. So, why did we implement dual stack? The fact that there's a general need for everyone to move to IPv6 is often insufficient in itself to encourage a business to implement. There are other reasons that made the case more compelling. Firstly, in order to support growth of the subscriber base, if we should need to purchase additional public IPv4 addresses, as you know, these are becoming increasingly scarce and expensive. Secondly, being able to offer services without IPv4, it seems many, many years away, unfortunately, and it was felt that it was better to be able to manage future growth using existing Vodafone-owned IPv4 address ranges rather than purchasing on the open market. And thirdly, CGNAT or similar methodologies seem inevitable to manage the public IPv4 address consumption in the meantime, but they also come with downsides, both in terms of hardware cost and some service restrictions, which thankfully seem to be less prevalent these days. The use of dual stack offers an alternative IPv6 connectivity path, which should both limit any CGNAT-related service constraints and reduces the workload of a CGNAT processing function. So, implementing IPv6 is just an address change for subscribers, right? I wish. There were many areas of the network and wider business that were impacted by the launch of dual stack. In terms of the network, some areas had to be developed for launch, whilst others have seen IPv6 implementation over a wider period of time. I'll pick out just a few of the key areas. Content delivery networks. A large proportion of broadband traffic, around 60 to 70%, is related to video. So implementing IPv6 on the various CDN provider caches was a key priority. Peering. We have both public and private peering. Private peering sees more traffic, so this was our priority for IPv6 implementation. This has been largely completed, and we're now cracking on with implementing IPv6 on public peering. Business systems. Actually, some of the biggest challenges with deployment didn't come from the network, but from changes required to internal IT systems. For example, broadband subscriber inventory. But I'm sure this won't come as a surprise to many in this room. A little on what it looks like facing the customer. In terms of our implementation, we wanted to introduce IPv6 capability without changing the existing IPv4 methodology. So hence using dual stack and continuing to allocate a public IPv4 address to the CPU WAN. We opted to allocate IPv6 prefixes dynamically rather than statically, as this would seem to meet the needs of most of the customers. The Broadband Network Gateway, the BNG, allocates a /56 prefix to the CPE using prefix delegation. The CPU then allocates /64 prefixes to various interfaces, so the WAN, the LAN, and the guest Wi-Fi, and then hosts use Slack to allocate themselves global unique addresses. We did consider allocating both a /56 prefix via PD and also a specific WAN host address to the CPU WAN interface, for diagnostic purposes. But this would have consumed additional host resources on the BNG, reducing subscriber scaling, so we decided to use PD only. With regards to DNS, at the moment we're using existing IPv4 connected servers, but returning A and Quad A records. But of course it wasn't all plain sailing. We're still early on in our experience of offering IPv6 connectivity to customers. Many of the difficulties in deploying IPv6 relate to it not being just a different addressing scheme, but a different way of working. Things that the business took for granted, for example, CP address allocation and host addressing, are different for IPv6 and become even more different the deeper you look, like the widespread use of ICMP for, for connectivity establishment. It's been difficult to know how much of the complexity of IPv6 we should hide from the business, whilst making sure that we can continue to support our customers. One of the challenges we've seen with using prefix delegation to the CPE is that the BNG, which hands out that /56 prefix, won't know what address the CPE has allocated to the WAN interface. So if you want to perform simple diagnostics, for example, pinging the CPE WAN from the BNG, you have to look elsewhere to find the CPE WAN address. This is even harder if the customer uses their own CPE rather than Vodafone provided one. At the moment, we have approximately 40% of traffic being IPv6, but of course we want to be able to increase this further. Whilst we can influence this by increasing the number of CDN caches and peering that use IPv6, we can't do much about the support for IPv6 in the wider cloud or in home devices. On the plus side, thus far we haven't really seen many IPv6 related issues from our customers. Just show you some interesting stats. Our total traffic, so IPv4 plus IPv6, has grown significantly. But whilst we used to see a growth rate of around 35% per subscriber per year, this now seems to be down at around 15 to 20%. It's interesting to note that although we have over 18 million mobile customers, the internet traffic for these is a fraction of that seen from the 1.4 million broadband customers. So on the graph there, the mobile is in the orange and the fixed broadband is in the green. In terms of IPv6, we've now enabled this to around 76% of our subscribers, and we aim to reach 100% by the end of this fiscal year. Nearly 40% of consumer broadband traffic is currently using V6, and we'd like to see this grow to around 60 to 70% in the next year. But as I mentioned previously, there are limited ways that we can influence this. IPv6 enablement for CDN providers is almost complete, and now we're working on rollout to peering connections. Now over to you. So you folks have far more experience of implementing IPv6 than I, and I'm keen to know if you know of any things that we could do to benefit customers and uptake of IPv6. So do grab me during a break and have a chat if you can. Any questions?
Hi, what was the reason for sticking with IPv4 for DNS? Was it just a question of effort or?
It's just priorities and timing, yeah.
Hi, so you said you deploying it because you're running out of V4, but you deploying dual stack, right?
Sorry, I would have to repeat that.
Sorry. So you deploying dual stack.
Yes.
How does it help you with IPv4 exhaustion if you still provide V4?
It's a stepping stone. So, I mean, I mentioned the swear word CGNAT earlier. So that's kind of inevitable. And actually, dual stack enables us to offload a lot of traffic off of a CGNAT function.
And sorry, I have a second question. You said 70+% of customers with V6, right?
Yes.
What's the reason for rest of them not using V6? Is it CPEs?
No. It's just a matter of the phasing of rollout. So migrating customers onto it, you have to migrate each customer onto V6 because you need to allocate them a new pool range and bounce them. So it's just a matter of timing. Any other questions?
Hey, so you said you had, I think, less than 50% of your P&Is dual stacked. Is that just a timing thing you have to go around, or is there any problem that's stopping you?
The private peering is pretty much done. The public peering's being worked on, so it's the public peering's a lot more peering, so it takes us time to get through it.
Right, sorry, I might have missed the dial for the P&I. What was the P&I ratio? So you got all of those done.
I'm going to point to Craig here.
Sorry.
Craig.
60%.
60?
Yeah, 60.
Okay. Is that just going around and having to touch them?
Exactly.
Okay, cool.
I think the only CDNs we haven't made with these rooms are on Sky.
Hi, yeah, really good talk, thank you. The breakdown of the video, or the streaming services you had, Netflix, then Google, then or Akamai, in terms of content anyway. Where are we with, it's not a question for you really, I suppose, but where are we with Amazon video streaming and Disney, those other services? Are they streaming over V6 or not at the moment?
I wouldn't know that, Craig.
It only made me
know
think,
that
just
one?
seeing what the stats were there.
Okay.
Well, I've got a final question for you. First of all, 38% seems very good. Numbers I've seen from other ISPs and other deployments have been about 30%. So,
Is it really?
Yeah, so you're doing a bit better there. But the question I had was about prefix delegation and going for dynamic. Are you giving customers the option of having a static prefix?
Not
or?
at the moment. I mean,
Okay.
it seems like a bit of a niche use case. So
It's one of the bugbears I keep seeing from home users who want to host something is dynamic prefixes make it absolutely impossible for them to do things
Right.
because they set up their firewall rules
Yes.
and then it all changes.
yeah.
So having some way for home users to have a static prefix
Yeah.
would probably be seen as a plus for them.
So what kind of proportion, just out of interest, what proportion of customers do you think might want that?
It's a niche, but it'll be anyone who's running a home lab.
Yeah, we're all here. So,
Anyone who's running a home lab,
yeah,
basically.
I think that's the difficulty, isn't it? Is the vast majority won't, but some will. So it's something we might have to tackle in future. Yeah. Yeah.
You currently offer static IPv4 addresses.
Yes.
Is it disparate?
See where it's going.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Kester. And because it's being recorded also, we don't have any award ceremony today, like in the previous years, because we have only Vodafone this year, but that doesn't mean, but we are very happy on behalf of the IPv6 World Forum to present you this award.
Thank you.
Because while you say 38% from your measurements, Apne actually sees like almost 60 from your ASN.
That's how you measure it, but yeah.
It depends how you measure it. But anyway, very happy that you can actually, your efforts can be recognized. And congratulations to you and your team. And hopefully
Thank you.
You can show it to your mobile, business side and tell them
Hint.
crack on, it's time to go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you from all the
Congratulations.
team that's here.